this is kind of a tricky thing because some people are like, oh, well, you think only whites are American? It's like, no, but it's about what America is, which is, are we going to, I mean, America's transformed by demographics, but it's like, are we going to allow that to transform our conception of ourselves? Yeah, America may be occupied by and full of aliens now and foreigners, but are we going to then accept this and alienate ourselves from ourselves because of their presence and say, you know, yes, America is now, you know, what, Mexicans are white and, you know, blacks are conservative? Like, no. Neoconservatism is about saying no. Like, nationhood runs deeper than, you know, assimilating and transmitting values and all this other nonsense. You know, what was really funny was when he was trying to say that, like, Hispanic people are white. And, like, that is something that is just only someone from a think tank could say that. No one in their lived experience would say that. Like, I don't know if I want to get too specific, but someone I know works at, well, let's just say a government institution in a Mexican neighborhood here at a school. They say the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish, okay? In Spanish. And they all eat their Takis, you know, Taki chips. And it's like a completely different place. You know, my mom, as an example, she grew up in Little Italy in Chicago. She grew up in Melrose Park, which was at one point an Italian neighborhood. And now it's all Mexicans. And as a consequence, crime is up, it's dirtier. And this is Melrose Park, this is Cicero, this is like all over the city. In other words, like, you can literally see the outward appearance of the buildings and the streets and all of it, the changing racial demographics. You could go to LA and go to a shopping mall, and you can see that whites are a minority in Los Angeles, because when you see all these Hispanics and they're all speaking Spanish and they got the 100 kids in their strollers and doing their thing, it's like, do you feel like you're in a white country? Do you feel like you're in an assimilated, oh, well, Italians became white and they adopted Anglo values, so will they, so have they. It's like, what person would argue that? What person would argue that these cities are not enclaves of a foreign country? And they're like, well, it's culture. Dude, they're non-white immigrants. They're non-white immigrants reproducing their non-white native culture in America. At the end of the day, it's something like basically cowardice, you know, because they know the consequences of what would happen to them if they were to, like, agree with me, if they were to believe these things. Like, I don't know that they're consciously saying, like, well, I'm going to lie to keep my job, but subconsciously that is happening, you know, because this is something that you're just not supposed to believe, but we all know it's true. And I said this earlier, they kept conflating, like, well, what is the direction of the country versus, like, how we should prepare for that or how we should strategize. It's like they don't see a difference because they're so thoroughly involved in the system that, like, they're inseparable from it. They're advocates. What they say cannot be divorced from, like, their line of work, which is that they believe that they're going to get all these blacks and Hispanics to vote for the GOP, and a GOP president's going to come to power, and these pussies are going to work for that president. And so that colors everything that they say. That's why everything that they say is, like, you know, this insane denial stuff. It's because, you know, in some sense is bound up in their future job prospects. That's
someone in the other chat who was, I guess, a Groiper as well, was saying that the America First vision is based off of, like, white culture and all that stuff, right? And I'm like, okay, how do y'all think people of color fit into that? Like, because from what I'm hearing, you guys are saying not that, like, that they don't have a place in there, but that it's distinctly a white American conservative movement, right? So, like, how do y'all see, like, black and brown folks in that movement? Or do you see them in the movement? I guess the question.
Well, no, they're in the movement. You know, like, black people watch my show and they come to my rallies and they support me, and Hispanics do too, and Asians do. Like, the movement is full. It's diverse. But the thing that they all recognize is, like, they don't want to undermine the character of America. Like that, it's like America's always had a black minority, you know, since its founding. They were slaves at the time, so it's, you know, it's arguable if that should be counted as part of the population because they were considered, you know, not like people per se, you know. So but they were there, they were on the land, and they in fact are people. So, you know, there was a minority then, and there's always been one. And, you know, there were Hispanics and Asians, like in California or in Texas or whatever. But what we're really getting at is that it's not necessarily having a minority population. Most countries have a minority population, whether they speak a different language or they're different ethnicity or a different religion. You could go from China to Russia to France. I mean, Spain, every country has these kinds of cleavages is a word for it. The problem, though, is that what's happening now is that the very identity and character of the nation is being challenged. It's like, it would be one thing if America was 80% white and it like looked like culturally, characteristically white country and felt like one, and the population's mostly white, and we had minorities and we had some limited immigration, like we did 50 years ago, 60 years ago. But the problem now is there's like this concerted attack on the demographics of America and the character and the identity of America. Like it's not saying like, hey, do people of color have a right to be here? It's like, we're going to burn the flag and we're going to replace it with one that's off-white to reflect how impure it is because of its original sin against blacks and people of color. And we have a new national anthem and we're going to do this, that, and the other. And like even within the conservative movement, they say things, America is about an idea. It's like, no, America's a nation of people. And I'll say, like me, I don't really consider myself 100% white because I am partly Hispanic, but also like my ancestors came here 100 years ago. To some extent, I recognize that like this isn't my home in the same way that it is the home of the people who descend from the founding stock. And there's like some element of like respect that comes with that, and some element of deference. I didn't come here to like overturn the way things are. That's kind of how it is. It's like, blacks and whites are different. Asians, Hispanics are different. There are Black Americans, African Americans, and white Americans, and they're different, and they express their culture differently, and their communities are different, and like that should be okay. But what's happening now is they want to exterminate white America. And they want to remove white America from its position of primacy, basically. And like, that's really the issue at hand. And so I don't think it's contradictory to say that blacks and Hispanics and Asians can support, an idea of America with a white identity. Because I think like that's part of the appeal of America. I think like people would rather live in a white neighborhood or in a whiter city or, place that looks characteristically European than these other places. And that's like, because America's the fruit of European civilization, and it can be enjoyed by minorities. I don't even think it's an option one way or the other. It is, but, minorities, for them to continue enjoying that and appreciating that, they got to respect where these things come from.